I was standing in my Chicago apartment holding a mug of coffee that had gone cold 2 hours ago, watching my baby sister marry a prince on live television. Ivy had looked me dead in the eye 2 days earlier and told me my presence would embarrass her in front of her new royal family. So I watched her wedding from a screen like every other stranger in America. And I felt absolutely nothing for the woman in the white gown. Then someone knocked on my door. Not a delivery knock. A heavy, deliberate knock that made my stomach drop before I even opened it. Two men stood in my hallway, wearing formal military dress. Gold braid on their shoulders. Medals catching the hallway light. The taller one bowed his head slightly. Miss Sinclair. His Royal Highness Prince Alexander of Labyrinth requests your presence immediately. A car is waiting downstairs. My name is Marlo Sinclair. I am 34 years old. I am a senior forensic accountant at one of the largest financial investigation firms in the country. And before I tell you how my sister's fairy tale wedding turned into the biggest financial scandal to ever hit a European royal family, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And if you've ever had to teach a toxic family member that your worth was never up for negotiation, hit like and subscribe, because this story is for you. Let me take you back 48 hours before that knock on my door. I had flown into Labyrinth, a small but staggeringly wealthy European principality, famous for its private banking sector and centuries of old money. 2 days before the wedding, the flight from Chicago had drained me, but I pushed through it because I was still, somehow, trying to be a good sister. The royal family had booked out an entire historic hotel for the wedding guests. A building of marble floors and gold leaf that looked like something out of a painting. I was given a modest room on the 4th floor. That was fine by me. I wasn't there for luxury. I was there for my sister. I was hanging my navy suit in the closet, the one I planned to wear to the rehearsal dinner, when my door flew open without a knock. Ivy stormed in wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than my first car. 29 years old. Golden hair. Diamonds on fingers she had never once paid for herself. She had spent her whole adult life chasing a certain kind of lifestyle. And now she had finally landed it. She threw a white envelope at my chest. It hit my collarbone and fell to the floor. "Pick it up," she said. I picked it up. Inside was a one-way economy ticket back to O'Hare. Departing in 3 hours. What is this? Ivy, it's your ticket out of my life. She started pacing across the Persian rug like she owned the room. You're an embarrassment. Marlo, you're 34. You're single. And you spend your whole life staring at spreadsheets. You have no elegance. No polish. No idea how to move in this world. I can't have you standing in the background of my wedding photos looking like a middle-class office drone. I had spent the last decade helping our parents out of debt, covering Ivy's rent more than once, working 80-hour weeks to build a career from absolutely nothing. My firm actually did compliance work connected to Labyrinth's central bank, but I never mentioned it, because our parents always told me not to overshadow Ivy's search for a good husband. I'm your sister, I said quietly. I flew across an ocean to support you. I don't want your support. She laughed, sharp and cruel. I'm marrying into European royalty. I cannot have them see my spinster sister standing next to me. You do not fit this world. Marlo, I want you gone before the rehearsal dinner. Don't show your face at my wedding. Before I could respond, her eyes dropped to my neck, to the small vintage diamond pendant hanging on a thin gold chain. It was the only thing our grandmother had left me before she passed. Specifically to me. Because she knew Ivy would have pawned it within a week. Ivy stepped forward and yanked it. The chain snapped against my skin. Give that back, I said, my voice rising for the first time. She slipped it into her robe pocket, smiling. A piece like this belongs on a future princess, not an accountant who sits in a cubicle. Consider it your wedding gift to me. She turned and walked out, letting the door slam behind her. I stood there alone in that hotel room, and I did not cry. I walked to the mirror, looked at the red mark forming on my neck, and felt something shift permanently inside my chest. I had spent my whole life dimming myself so my sister could shine. I had funded an illusion of family wealth with my own salary, while my parents took every ounce of credit. That illusion was now completely gone. They were never my family. They were people who had learned to feed off my stability. And Ivy had just declared war on a forensic accountant without having the slightest idea what that meant. I went downstairs to find my parents. The lobby glittered with chandeliers and champagne and wealthy strangers in designer clothes. I found my parents, Diane and Richard, holding court near a grand piano, performing the role of a distinguished American family for an audience of European aristocrats. Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you. Their pleasant smiles vanished. My mother pulled me behind a pillar. Out of sight of her new audience, Ivy broke into my room. I said, keeping my voice low. She banned me from her own wedding and physically ripped grandmother's necklace off my neck. I waited for outrage. I waited for my father to march upstairs and demand it back. Instead, my mother sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. Must you always be so dramatic? Marlo, it's just jewelry. Your sister is under enormous pressure right now. She assaulted me. She stole family property. My father took a slow sip of his scotch. Your sister has an image to protect now. Frankly, your presence here is a liability. You've always been jealous of her. Jealous, I said. I paid off your business loans. Dad, I paid for the renovation on your house. Mom, I work 80-hour weeks while Ivy shops on money I earned. That's exactly the problem. My mother snapped. You've turned into a human calculator. No man wants that. Go pack your bags and use the ticket she gave you. I looked at these two people and realized, with total clarity, that they were strangers to me. Worse than strangers. They were parasites who had simply found a bigger host. I'm not leaving without my property, I said. I'll go to the local authorities if I have to. My father's face went red. He signaled 2 hotel security guards near the entrance. This woman is harassing my family, he told them, without hesitation. She isn't on the guest list. Please escort her out. My own mother turned her back to me and sipped her champagne while security walked me upstairs, watched me pack, and marched me through that glittering lobby like a criminal. The doors clicked shut behind me. I was alone on a cobblestone street in a foreign country with a suitcase and absolutely nothing else. But they had forgotten one very important detail. I am a forensic accountant. I pulled my coat tight against the cold and opened a travel app to book a new hotel. My primary card was declined. My backup card was declined. A third card, declined. A fourth, a cold knot formed in my stomach. I opened my banking app expecting a temporary security hold. Instead, every single credit line I had built over 10 years showed a balance of 0 available credit. My checking account was overdrawn. My phone rang before I could even process it. It was Camille, my sister-in-law, a corporate attorney married to my older brother Nathaniel, and the only person in my family who had ever seen things clearly. Marlo, listen carefully, she said, her voice all business. Are you somewhere safe? I'm standing outside the hotel. Security just threw me out. My cards are frozen. Something is wrong with my accounts. I know, she said grimly. I'm looking at mail forwarded from your parents' house right now. Your credit score dropped almost 300 points in the last 2 days. That's impossible. I have 0 debt. I pay every statement in full. You didn't open these accounts, Camille said. Someone else did. I stood frozen as luxury cars rolled past me toward the wedding festivities. What exactly are you looking at? Default notices. Massive withdrawal confirmations. Your parents have your social security number. Your birth certificate. Every security question answer from your childhood. Marlowe. They took out a $200,000 loan against the rental property. Your grandfather left the three of you jointly. And they forged your signature to do it. $200,000. The number hit me like a slap. I had a 33% stake in that property. A stake I had never touched. Trusting my parents to manage the income honestly, they needed your credit profile. Camille explained. You have zero debt. 6-figure savings. An immaculate history. The bank barely blinked, because on paper, you looked bulletproof. The loan cleared 2 weeks ago, and your father wired the entire amount overseas. To Labyrinth. I closed my eyes. 2 weeks ago was exactly when Ivy started posting pictures of designer shopping sprees in Paris. When my parents suddenly upgraded to private charter flights, they needed to buy Ivy a dowry. I said slowly. A trust to prove she was old money. So the royal family wouldn't see her as a fortune hunter. They sacrificed you to do it, Camille said quietly. They sold your entire financial future to buy her a title. I felt the shock give way to something colder, something steadier. Camille, I said, I need you to compile everything. Every document. Every routing number. I want proof so complete no lawyer on earth can argue with it. I'm already on it, she said. What are you going to do from Labyrinth? I took a slow breath. I'm going to do my job. And then I'm going to burn their fairy tale to the ground. I found a small independent motel 3 miles outside the Royal District. The kind of place with no valet and no questions asked. I paid cash. Using emergency funds Camille had wired to a digital wallet completely separate from my compromised accounts. The room was bare, a narrow bed. A cheap coffee maker. Flickering lights, and it felt like the safest place on earth. It was a blind spot. My family thought I was somewhere crying. They had no idea I was already working. I opened my laptop and logged into the professional-grade forensic software my firm used for major investigations. Camille sent over everything she'd gathered, the forged signature, the loan documents, the wire transfer records. I traced the money. It had moved from the loan account into a temporary holding account. Then overseas into a shell company registered in an offshore jurisdiction, calling itself Meridian Capital Partners. My father had bought it off an online broker to make it look like decades of matured family wealth. From there, the funds moved directly into a private escrow account inside Labyrinth's royal banking system, earmarked as Ivy's bridal trust. It was a neat, tidy little package, ready to be presented to the royal family as proof of generational wealth. Except my father, in his endless desire for a bargain, had left digital fingerprints all over it. Before I could dig deeper, my phone lit up. Dozens of messages poured in from cousins, old classmates, people I hadn't spoken to in years. A gossip article had gone viral overnight, claiming the bride's older sister had suffered a psychological breakdown, arrived intoxicated, caused a security incident, and had to be forcibly removed and flown home for emergency treatment. It was a coordinated smear, timed perfectly to explain my absence from the wedding photos and destroy my credibility in advance, in case I ever tried to speak up. Then my phone rang again. It was my managing partner, Marlowe, he said, his voice tight. We have a serious situation. The board is placing you on immediate unpaid suspension pending review. Our firm holds sensitive government contracts. We cannot have this kind of exposure attached to your name. I understand, I said calmly, because I did understand exactly how corporate risk management worked. Optics over truth. Every time, he apologized and hung up. My corporate access was cut within the hour. They had taken my finances, my reputation, now my career. They believed they had stripped away everything that mattered to me. They had actually done something far more dangerous. They had removed every reason I had left to hold back. I spent the rest of that night building a single document, a complete forensic dossier. Section 1. The Forged Signature. The Falsified Power of Attorney. The geolocated data proving the digital signature originated from my parents' home router at a time I was in a boardroom in Chicago with a dozen witnesses. Section 2. The Full Wire Transfer Trail from the fraudulent loan to the offshore shell company. Section 3. The section that would matter most. Connected that shell company to an active joint investigation by federal authorities and an international financial crimes task force. The company had been flagged for laundering money tied to organized narcotics trafficking across 2 continents. My father hadn't just committed fraud against his own daughter. He had unknowingly funneled criminal syndicate money directly into a sovereign nation's royal treasury, a nation whose entire economy was built on a reputation for financial transparency. I sat back and let that settle. This was no longer a family dispute. This was a detonator. I sent the dossier to 3 places: the office of Larenthia's Minister of Finance, the head of the Royal Treasury, and through my firm's secure crime reporting channel. Before my access was fully cut, the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI's New York field office. 4 minutes later, the read receipts started coming in. First, the Ministry of Finance. Then the Royal Treasury. Then, finally, a restricted address I didn't recognize, but immediately understood: the personal office of the reigning monarch, King Frederick. 40 minutes after that, I heard engines outside my motel window. I looked through the curtain and saw 3 black armored vehicles pull into the cracked parking lot, boxing in every exit. I smoothed my white suit, picked up my briefcase, and opened the door before they could knock twice. "Miss Sinclair," the lead officer said, bowing his head. "His Majesty requests your presence at the palace immediately." "Lead the way," I said. The convoy swept past the cheering crowds lining the streets, past the flowers being thrown for a bride they didn't yet know had built her future on stolen money, and into a private entrance beneath the palace. I was escorted through gilded corridors toward a set of massive doors, behind which the reception was already in full swing. Inside, chandeliers the size of small cars hung above hundreds of dignitaries. An orchestra played. Waiters moved through the crowd with champagne. At the center of it all, Ivy spun in the arms of Prince Alexander, our grandmother's stolen diamond glittering against her collarbone. Cameras broadcasting the moment to millions of viewers across the globe. Near the edge of the dance floor, my parents toasted with visiting dignitaries, glowing with the kind of confidence that only comes from believing you've gotten away with something. The doors were shoved open. The music died mid-note. Every head in that ballroom turned toward me. I walked in wearing a white suit, flanked by 4 members of the Royal Protection Detail, my heels striking the marble floor like a countdown. Ivy froze mid-spin. The blood drained from her face. I stopped 10 feet from the center of the dance floor. King Frederick descended from his dais, bypassed his own son, and walked directly to me. He extended his hand. "Thank you, Miss Sinclair," he said, loud enough for the cameras and the silent crowd to hear. "Your service to this crown today will not be forgotten." I turned to Prince Alexander and handed him the printed dossier, bound and sealed. "Your Highness, you believe you're marrying into an American family of generational wealth. You are not. Your bride's parents forged my signature to secure a $200,000 loan against property I legally co-own, then laundered it through a shell company, currently under federal investigation for ties to an international trafficking syndicate. That money is sitting in your royal escrow account right now." Ivy lunged for the folder. "Alexander, don't listen to her. She's unstable. My publicist warned you." The prince stepped back from her as if she carried something contagious. My mother dropped to her knees on the marble floor, sobbing. My father stammered about lawsuits and misunderstandings. Then, right on cue, they both turned to the crowd and tried the only weapon they had left. "She's having a breakdown," my mother wailed. "She's been struggling with addiction for years." We tried to get her help. I didn't argue. I simply nodded toward the palace's communications officer, who tapped a tablet. The massive screens behind us, meant to display wedding photos, lit up instead with a live feed of Camille, sitting behind her desk in her Chicago office. "Good evening, Your Majesty," she said. "I'm Camille Sinclair, corporate attorney, and Marlowe's sister-in-law. Since her parents are claiming this is fabricated, let's look at the security footage from the bank where they forged her signature 3 weeks ago." The screen switched to grainy but unmistakable footage. My father, laughing, signing documents under my name while a loan officer nodded along. Then audio. A voicemail my father had left my brother, explaining in his own words that they had to get me out of the hotel before I discovered my accounts were frozen, that the wedding needed to be over before I could make a scene. The ballroom went dead silent. There was no argument left to make. King Frederick raised his hand. "This institution was built on transparency," he said. "This marriage was secured through fraud. I hereby annul this union. Effective immediately." Ivy screamed. Royal protocol officers stepped forward and stripped her, piece by piece, of every borrowed jewel, the tiara, the rings, the bracelets, and finally reached for the pendant at her throat. "That's mine," I said quietly. "You told me a future princess deserved it more. You're not a princess. You're a woman about to be indicted." The chain came off. I slipped my grandmother's diamond into my pocket. "Get them out of my sight," the king said. They were deported within hours, stripped of passports and privileges, loaded onto a bare cargo transport for the 12-hour flight home, somewhere over the Atlantic. Whatever family loyalty had held them together finally collapsed. Ivy screamed at our parents for ruining her one chance at nobility. My mother sobbed over lost status. My father muttered about lawyers who could fix everything, still not understanding the scale of what was coming. When the plane touched down at O'Hare, they expected to slip quietly into a taxi and disappear into their old life. Instead, they stepped onto the tarmac into a wall of federal agents, handcuffs, formal charges, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and international money laundering tied to a syndicate under active federal surveillance. My father received a 10-year federal sentence. My mother received 8. Every asset they owned was seized to cover restitution and fines. The house was auctioned. The country club memberships, gone. Ivy's public unraveling was just as complete. The annulment made headlines worldwide. No one in the circles she'd clawed her way toward wanted anything to do with a woman whose family had funneled cartel-linked money into a royal treasury. Last I heard, she was working retail at a department store in Manhattan, folding the same designer dresses she used to buy without blinking. My brother Nathaniel, who had spent years staying silent to protect his place in the family, was served divorce papers by Camille the same week. She told him plainly that she refused to stay married to a man who chose comfort over honesty every single time it mattered. Back home, my firm tried to win me back with an apology, a reinstatement offer, and an accelerated partnership. I declined. King Frederick's government had already offered me an independent consulting retainer worth more than any partnership track, overseeing anti-fraud protocols for the royal treasury itself. Camille and I used the momentum to launch our own firm instead, forensic accounting and financial law, built entirely on our own terms. A year later, I stood on the terrace of my own apartment, looking out over a city skyline, holding a glass of wine instead of a paper cup of bad coffee. My grandmother's diamond sat in a drawer inside. Safe. Finally home. People confuse the appearance of wealth with actual power. They think a title, a loan, a stolen necklace can buy them something real. It can't. Real power is knowing exactly how to follow the money, and never, ever needing anyone else's permission to reclaim what's yours. If you've ever had to draw a hard line with a toxic family member who tried to control your life, Tell me about it in the comments. I want to hear how you found your way back to yourself. If this story meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, and stay strong. Your worth was never theirs to decide.